Hello, ladies, and welcome to the Empower Hour. I'm Glynis Chester. I am your host for the series that provides in-depth discussion on all sorts of issues that are forefront in today's political landscape. We give you the tools to speak with authority on the issues that people are talking about right now. So we want you to know everything that you need to know and to sound like you know what you're doing. So here we go. You're in the right place. We have a fantastic program for you today. I'm so excited. You've all heard how important it is to bring younger women into our clubs to build the bench or to embrace technology. But I'd like you to think of something a little different. I'd like you to consider your legacy, specifically your leadership legacy. You've spent years, sometimes decades, investing your time, your talent, your treasure, your sweat equity, and those things have paid off. You've had successful campaigns, legislation, community service, and you're a respected leader in your community. But what actual legacy are you going to leave in your club when you hang up your gavel? So today, our guests are going to give us the answers, and they are going to unlock the keys to leaving an indelible mark on both your community and your club through the mentorship of young women. And I don't think that we can undersell how important that is, not only for the next generation, but for right now, because their voices are so important. But the wisdom that you bring to the table is also important. So this is I think maybe one of my very favorite programs that we've done for the years. I'm very excited. But before I introduce tonight's speaker, we want to do our housekeeping as we always do. Please keep yourselves muted. We will answer as many questions as possible throughout the panel discussion. A huge thank you to Erica Watley and Kim Bowers, who are providing technical support throughout the evening, because you know I don't do that. And finally, don't forget to let your clubs know that all of our past episodes of this program are available on the NFRW website in the resource library. So tonight, I'm excited to introduce my guests, and they are Maria, Sofia, and Liliana Norkaitis, both of whom serve on the Youth Outreach Committee at the NFRW. They have taken youth engagement to a whole new level. I mean, we've always said, oh, young women are important. Let's do something with that. No, this term, they've blown it out of the water. So I want to tell you a little bit about each one of them. Maria not only serves as the committee's chair, she's also the fourth VP of the Maryland Federation of Republican Women. Yeah, I know, right? She's not an underachiever at all. Maria is also the former chair of the Maryland Young Republicans and has over a decade of experience holding various leadership positions in Maryland Republican politics. Lily is a sophomore at the University of Maryland, College Park, and serves on the board of the Maryland Federation of Republican Women as the recording secretary. She is also the former chair of the Hartford County Teenage Republicans and is currently running for chair, I love that, of the Maryland College Republicans. As you can see, these ladies really take politics seriously. They are motivated, they have energy, it is contagious, and sometimes I think they probably accomplish more before their first cup of coffee than I've had, all week long, but I digress. Maria and Lily, thank you so much for joining us this evening. If you'd like to say a quick hello before we jump into the questions.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Glynis. It's amazing to be on, and thank you for the work that your committee does as well. I feel like this is like a crossover episode between two NFRW committees, between youth outreach and programs. So I know Lily and I are really excited about this. But before I get started, we also want to give a quick shout out to the rest of our committee as well. Jen Kinesic from Texas, Elizabeth Gerard from New Hampshire, and Justice Peyton Zauber from North Carolina. We tend to be the faces of our committee, but they also do incredible work as well as the more than 30 youth outreach liaisons that we have across the country, which we'll talk about that a little bit later, I'm sure. But definitely just want to thank them and thank our home federation as well, because we get to do the work that we do here at NFRW because our federation in Maryland gives us the support that we need to do what we want to do here at NFRW. So just eternally grateful for our past president, Diana Waterman, and our current president, Sharon Carrick, for believing in us and giving us this opportunity as well.
Excellent.
Yeah, and
Lily?
thank you. Yeah, thank you to the programs committee for having us on. When we started this journey about a year and a half ago now, we did not think we would get where we have today. And it's truly been the support of the amazing women at the National Federation of Republican Women. So I'm really happy to be on tonight to kind of share what we've done, our findings, and how we can help get even more young women into the Federation.
You know, that's like the perfect segue into my very first question. Thank you. It's like we planned it. I don't know.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the goals that you have set for your committee and the resources that you've developed for our members to use.
So the NFRW Youth Outreach Committee, I think it's important to start where we started, which was just over a year and a half ago. Lily and I had kind of talked about this committee. We had seen it online. I know Lily had met with former President Ann Shockett, and we got an email from President Sobchak, and she wanted to sit down on a Zoom meeting with us and kind of talk about what we would want to bring to this committee. And so we kind of laid it out. And by the end of the meeting, she said, Maria, will you chair it? Lily, will you vice chair? And so we just kind of went off to the races. And so the goals kind of have evolved since we started. It first started with building the committee because we were essentially building a committee from a non-existent one. So we first put out a goal of, okay, let's start reaching out to women that we knew were members of the Federation that we knew would want to be a part of this. And so I knew a couple of our committee members already because they're young Republicans and social media. And I was like, you're at a Republican meeting, a Republican women's meeting, you know, do you want to do this? And so by mid last year, we had our committee set. And one of the first goals that we had was our youth liaison program, which was the first goal because we wanted to have boots on the ground in every state. So that was goal number one. And then once we pretty much had the coverage that we felt good with from even a regional standpoint, we then had goals to put out materials, which Lily's going to talk about in just a second. But more importantly, the goal was to make other young women feel welcome in this federation. And I think that's something that's so important because when a young woman can look out and feel like she sees someone else that's her age, she's going to want to come back and want to do that. So we wanted to foster an environment where we felt young women could come in and feel like they're welcome. And so that's still to this day one of our main goals. And our other goal is obviously to grow the membership of the Federation and carry out the principles of the Republican Party and still be those boots on the ground as well. But I'm gonna toss it over to Lily, and she's gonna talk a little about the resources because Lily, I'm gonna give her a shout out here. She's like what I call like our chief branding officer on the committee. She makes everything look good. So she really takes kind of our ideas and puts them into action, if you will, on paper. So Lily, you wanna talk a little bit about those resources?
Yeah, Maria's giving praise to everyone tonight. But no, so one of the things that we did over, like I said, the last like 18 months, we created resources. We started with just making like a one-pager. It's a beginner's guide to youth outreach, going through digital outreach, issues that are involved or that young women are interested in, and the grassroots and how you engage in getting those young women as members. And we made one page, so we're like, why not make it 20? And we developed the youth outreach guide, which it was about 8 months of work. Every committee member was involved in the making of this. There were several liaisons that also helped out with information, and we finally got it done. It was a big old packet. And it just goes in depth more of the talking points that we have so far, or that were on the beginner's guide, going more in depth for types of digital outreach and digital media, more in depth in the issues, and then more into the leadership of once you're getting those young women, kind of what do you do with them? Then we thought, why not bring it in even further? Started making more of the one-pagers. Just again, for those that might not want to read 20 pages, got to break it up. So we made a specific one-pager for issues, going again more in depth to those and what issues are important to young Republican women. Then we have one that is coming soon, which will be kind of the information that we're going to talk about today, and that's facts and questions. So just kind of a short, again, one-pager of kind of the questions that we've gotten as Maria and I have traveled to your state federations and gotten these questions. So giving giving some sort of platform for everyone to kind of see what everyone's asking, and then learn from there. But yeah, one of the big things with the committee too is that when you hear the term youth outreach, it is not just youth of that like 13 to 18 kind of range. That is much bigger than that. That our committee seeks the 18 to 45. So again, why I love our committee is that there is 20 years in between me and our oldest member. So even between Maria and I, there are 10 years. No one really thinks that, but having that range of 18 to 40 gives enough, or 18 to 45 gives enough of those extra 5 years to kind of accept some of those young Republicans that are aging out and trying to find something new. So we really go from everything ranging from student to young professional to mom to late stages, having high schoolers as kids, that we have a strong a large sense of what youth means. It's a lot goes under that umbrella. When you're considering what it means to be youth outreach, that it's a lot more than just kids. But yeah, so we are always trying to develop new resources. We as we learn, like I said, we're still somewhat new to this, being about 18 months in. So there's always new information coming about things that we learn from other states. So more resources are certainly to come in the future.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I think it's really great that you're pulling in all the things that you're learning from going state to state, because it's always impressive to me to see, oh, there they are. Now they're in Michigan. Now they're in New Hampshire. Now they're in, Wyoming. You seem like you're popping around all over the place, which is fantastic. I love the concept of securing our legacy through mentorship. Can you explain what that means to you?
Sure. So one of the things that I love about the NFRW is it provides such an opportunity for mentorship. And it's unique because you can look at all other Republican organizations, young Republicans, college Republicans, teenage Republicans, whatever it may be, but there's not that opportunity for that wide range of mentorship. So for example, we talk a lot about fostering a multi-generational sisterhood. That tends to be our kind of go-to phrase with the Youth Outreach Committee, which we find is kind of one of those things that can really be broken down in a lot of facets. And so when we have an opportunity to connect young women with some of our more seasoned members, as I call them, it really allows for our young women to grow. And I particularly want to give Glennis, your home state of Texas, a shout out, because your 40 under 40 program is like, when I heard you guys were doing it, I just was like, yes, this is exactly what we're talking about. And I'm so excited to come to Texas this fall to see it come to fruition, where we can match young women up with our current NFRW and your state federation members, because there's so much to learn. And the more I get to know women at the NFRW and from different states, I feel like that's one of my favorite things about our national meetings is I can have a conversation with one member from one state and then the next meeting talk to a completely different state. And that's one of my favorite things that I get to do when I get to travel. And thank you again to all the presidents that invite us out to come. It's one of my favorite things because we can really understand what's going on from a state level and what you're dealing with. And it's also nice when I can go see my youth outreach liaison and say, hey, it's good to see you in person, or meet other young women that are kind of in the back of the room and they're like, there's more of you in other states. And as we've grown as a committee, particularly with our liaison program, it really has become this community. And so when we're able to pair people off, pair these young women off with members in their federation where they can learn, they can grow both personally, professionally, and politically. That's always my goal. I think you need to grow in all three areas to really maximize what you can get out of the NFRW. And if you can do that, you're going to have a incredible experience and then be able to eventually pass that on as well. So, but I think on putting the shoe on the other foot, if you're a older member of the NFRW, within your state, understand that young women can be a part of your legacy because you're not going to be here forever. And so when you're no longer, here, you can have someone carrying the torch for you. And I think that's what's been really successful for us at Youth Outreach, because we've been able to kind of convey that message in a way where it's, you can teach us how to do things, but in a tactful way where we can kind of put our own spin on it, and make our own impact, but still carry you with us as a mentor or someone we look up to, or someone who taught us the ropes. So I think there's a lot of room to kind of break that down, and everyone can kind of approach it very differently. And the more that states embrace that, and that frankly our membership embraces that, the better experience our young women can get out of the NFRW.
I agree 100%. I just think it is such an opportunity for us, and especially as one of those seasoned members, to pass along the things that are very important to us. Because otherwise, once we're gone, once I win the lottery and I'm sailing around the world for the next 10 years, I'm sure that's going to happen any day now. There's, no one's going to remember the things that I did, or that scholarship was important to me. Who's going to remember that? But if I'm mentoring a young woman to start taking over and saying, look, these are the things that are important and this is why, then they become important to her. And so that's how you cement your legacy. I love it. Okay, so this one I think is interesting, because I have heard this before from other young women. No matter how well-intentioned, words matter. And when someone pats you on the head and says, it's so nice to have a young person here, it can feel really patronizing. So what advice can you give about things to say or not say to younger women that may come into your club for the first time, or when you're first trying to get them to become members?
Yeah, so absolutely. I think with that kind of phrase, it's so nice to have a young person here. I think the big thing to remember and realize is that the NFRW is a sisterhood. And we are all, no matter what age, we are all sisters. One of my favorite things is I'll give a shout out to Garrett County here in Maryland. One of our regional chairs says a few times, she'll say, oh, I'm old enough to be your grandma. And I'm like, no, we're sisters. Remember, we're sisters. And I think that's important. And once you start to realize that it is a sisterhood, and that we are all similar in being Republican women, that's when the table starts turning, of having those more in-depth conversations, getting young women into leadership, being treated like someone else at the table. Now, I'll start with things not to say. Again, it's sad to say that it's said as much as it is, but one of the worst things you could possibly say to a young woman is, you need to wait your turn. No matter where, no matter who it is, frankly, because I know this happens to the seasoned members too. When you start telling women that they need to wait their turn, they're not going to come back. And if you're not welcome, if you don't have a welcoming environment from the beginning, allowing young women to try to help if they want to, you're losing that legacy aspect, that those women aren't going to come back. And if a young woman wants to work, wants to help out and be a leader within your state federation or your club, that you need to help her get to where she wants to in bettering the NFRW, and be a guide for that. Obviously, another big thing, don't tell anyone they're too young. I hate that. That is one of the worst things you could say. I am 19 years old. I started in the Federation when I was 16. I was just enough where in the state of Maryland, you can register to vote at 16. You just can't vote quite yet. So yeah, I'm very much a member, just like everyone else. But there's no point in when anyone is ever too young to do anything, just as no one's ever too old to do anything. Except the man in the White House right now, but that, but no one is ever too young to do anything, and it is never someone's, not someone's turn. It can always be someone's turn. You can make it work. But as for things to say, the best thing is just offering help, being that mentor, and allowing young women to speak and hear what they have to say. That sometimes just listening goes a long way in saying anything. but also when young women have questions, answer them in a tactful way, help them with the resources that they're looking for to achieve what they want to, and just be welcoming. That starting the conversation is the most important thing. But telling them they're too young you're never going to get that conversation back. And things like that are how we lose the legacy. But having those conversations and being accepting of hearing what young women have to say is how we do this legacy and how we build the sisterhood to be as multi-generational as it is now.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Very good advice. Okay, so in your PowerPoint training, you discuss meeting women where they are. That's something that I say when I talk about programs too, and membership. But what do you mean when you're talking about engagement of young women? What do you mean by that, meeting women where they are?
So meeting women where they are is something that I like to say to a lot, Glennis, because as Lily said, our range that we target with youth outreach is 18 to 45. And so that is a lot of life to cover and a lot of different stages. So some of the women we work with are professional, and some of them are moms, and some of them are, just trying to figure it out. Honestly, some of them are students. So understanding where they are in their life and what their bandwidth is. And so if they come to a meeting, maybe not like say, oh, what if do you want to run the social media, which is something that our ladies unfortunately get all the time. They're like, but I'm not just like a young person that knows how to understand Instagram. Like that's not all I am. And so striking that balance, understanding, trying and getting to know them will help you do that. So starting that conversation, like Lily was saying, of just listening and understanding where they're coming from, what brought them to your meeting in the first place is also really important, because then you can better understand how to reach more young women like them. So that's really important. And the other thing that I talk about a lot, and Lily talks about this too, is giving your young women, once they're there, a role. It doesn't matter how big it is. If they want to be involved, let them be involved, because involvement makes them invested, which then gives them the opportunity to have an impact. So involvement, investment, impact is something that we talk about too, because taking those steps to keeping them involved and then allowing them to feel like, people rely on me, and and you start investing time in it. And then all of a sudden they're becoming a club president, or they're taking on a larger role in your federation. And now they have an opportunity to make an impact. And so when you meet young women where they are in their lives and understand that, then that really allows you as a state federation or a club to maximize the strengths of the women that are coming in the room. And if you don't overwhelm them, then they come back. And I think that's so important, because sometimes young women sit in the back of the room, they can be a little skittish. If people don't talk to them. I mean, I even get it too. So at NFRW meetings, I've had a couple of presidents say, my gosh, you're like one of the only people that talks to me. And I'm like, I try to talk to everyone, because I know what it's like to be in the back of the room and be one of the youngest people in the room, and people either like aren't sure how to approach you, or they kind of just walk past you. So trying to get to know them, understanding where they're coming from, and then ultimately kind of gauging where they can have the greatest impact in your federation, I think is something that's important.
Okay, I love that. It's funny that you mentioned that, because the very next question that I had is, how do I keep young members engaged once they're coming to my meetings? And that's kind of what you just said, that you get them involved.
I would say there's some other things, but Lily, do you want to
yeah, absolutely. I can definitely take it over. So one of the big things is time of day for meetings. That not everyone can do a luncheon on a Thursday or during the week. I have class and work. While sometimes my work allows me where I could go if I wanted to, or sometimes some classes are not as important as the NFRW. but that not every woman is in that instance. So having some sort of time of day where it's like after work hours, after school hours, or during the weekend, that gives a little bit more flexibility for young women to be able to be able to attend with the crazy extra other curriculars and lives that we're living. But also try to think about cost. If you're having meetings at a country club and you have to pay like $100 to go to every meeting, that's really not sustainable. But also programming. So as you grow with your federations, one of the things I'll shout out to South Dakota is that President
100%.
yes, that President Catherine Barranco, she has done some kind of more unconventional meetings. There was one where it was like pachyderm and petties. So they're just went to go get mani-pedis. There were also like mom meetups of young moms within the federation bringing their kids to play, which is when you get the really little young youth Republicans that are starting those friendships and being brought up in that Republican environment. So things like that allow for that flexibility of young women to then not have to get childcare because they're allowed to bring their kids. And obviously that doesn't have to be an every month kind of thing, but just giving some sort of flexibility for young women to be able to bring their kids if you have members that, or at least a lot of moms with young children as members. Another thing with programming is that not everyone wants to hear from the same elected official every time. That sometimes changing it up is what's needed. And I'll give a shout out, 'cause, I mean, being so close to DC, some of the DC programming is just amazing across all of the organizations. And one of the things that the Right Now Women PAC did was they did like a speed mentoring thing, where there were like chiefs of staff on the Hill, there were lobbyists, consultants that were all Republican women that were then given a number and you went to the table and they would then meet with some young woman seeking some sort of mentorship. And that was really cool, being able to collect cards from women that that were willing to just help you and wanted to help you succeed professionally. So areas that have, I guess, your big like more metropolitan city areas, getting some sort of connection with your Republicans within like the campaign world, consulting, that sort of thing, would help in establishing that mentorship legacy kind of thing, in getting young women engaged, knowing that they'll get some sort of professional support out of membership. So yeah, big thing would be time of day, cost, and then programming for keeping young women interested and engaged in coming to meetings. Change it up sometimes.
That is brilliant. But yes, very good ideas. I know one of the things that I tell people when they're doing programs is, when you're trying to bring young women in, you can't always set your programs to things that your current membership is interested in. You may not want to talk about the legislation that was just passed for seniors, right, all the time, when you're trying to bring young women in, because they're going to have no interest in that. So you might want to save that for a special event that can be by Zoom or a luncheon or something, and then just have that demographic of your membership go to that, and then have something that covers everything for your main meeting. Okay, so that's a perfect segue. I just love the way this meeting is going. How do we find young Republicans that maybe haven't become involved yet? Maybe they're just out there and they know they're conservative, and they probably vote, but they haven't really done anything else. How do we find them? And say,
okay, this is my favorite question.
This is Lily's, like, this is her thing. So
yeah, this is my favorite question.
Lily, tell us.
Because something that happened just last week is why we just got a new member of my county chapter literally today. So I will segue into that just in a minute. So one of the big things for like young Republican women who might not yet be involved in the Federation is any like election or elected official, campaign staff, state party staff. I right now work for a state delegate here in Maryland, but before that I was an intern on the Hill for Senator John Kennedy. So being able to meet young women, okay, again, I love DC because there are so many women from everywhere. So being able to meet, like, there was an intern that I met out of Senator Marshall's office in Kansas. First thing I was like, "Are you a part of your Republican Women's Federation?" And she was like, "Oh, I think I am." I'm like, "Let's make sure," and got her all set up. And same thing, meeting women on the Hill, or there was one woman that I met at the speed mentoring event that is now the treasurer for a club, a newly founded club in DC. So being able to find women that are like in like some sort of like government or political role that might not know the resources that we have at the NFRW, I mean, they're already engaged in the process. They know the Republicans are supporting Republican policies and ideals. So that is a very easy way to pick up members who might not be quite as partisan yet as we are. But now, one of my favorite things that I said just happened last week, my local chapter, the Harford County Republican Women, we had a float for the 4th of July, and we were marching along, and I saw someone in the crowd yell out my name. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, Erica, like, I haven't seen her in forever." We were in high school together. We did speech and debate. We were in our Sheriff's Explorers program together. And she reached out and said, "Oh, like, I didn't know we had like a Republican Women's Club." I said, "Absolutely, it's so much fun. Are you interested?" She said, "Yeah." And I just got it solidified today. She started paying dues. So we now have another 19-year-old in the Hertford County Republican Women. That what I love so much about that is that the fact that she saw another young woman in the club is what inclined her to join. That it wasn't just the seasoned members, that there was some age diversity there. And that gives opportunity to learn, opportunity to, see women that you can relate to a little bit more, to then help you in kind of spreading your wings a little bit more and meeting with other women in the Federation. So I think giving being involved in like, whether it's like state fairs or parades, but making sure you have a very large array of your members that are walking, because you too might see a young woman out in the crowd that says, "Oh, like, I want to join." And I'm so ecstatic. I'm so happy Erica finally paid her dues. But it's things like that, just little interactions with people that might not have thought that they would enjoy something like this, of doing that outreach. And then another thing would be the other auxiliaries. So like I said, I was in the Teenage Republicans. Now I'm in CRs, and I'm also technically a YR. So I'm like in all of that, but that gives a way for a segue of creating a pipeline for people to go from each of the auxiliaries. But another thing is just encouraging them to join both. That, I mean, you can, I'm like technically 3 of those right now, but that you can be in all of them and still do impact to each and every organization, but also giving those YRs that are like aging out, that have hit that age 40 mark and no longer qualify for membership. Trying to work with your like local YRs or your state YRs to get a list of women who've aged out that aren't members of the Federation is, again, a prime spot for getting them, which is why our committee is that 18 to 45, so that we can still get that little age range extra of women to then bring them in, still under our mission of youth outreach. But no, being in the community and making sure that you have a young woman present as you're going into the community is how you bring more of them in, and it inclines more to join.
Excellent. Yeah, and I would argue that cross-pollination, for lack of a better word, actually makes all of our organizations better, because when you are a member of each one, you can share ideas and like, "Hey, we're doing this over here and this has been really successful," or, "Hey, we tried this and yeah, it didn't work out so well, but maybe if we did it this way, it would be." So I think all of the experiences that you get from each organization will help to make the other ones even more successful. So that's fabulous. I love that. Okay, so let me see. What else did I have here? Oh, this is actually my question that I threw in here because, and I want to do it right now because it goes with what we're talking about. I am a big proponent of like texting campaigns and postcard campaigns because in Texas they have been very, very successful. So how can we target young women through these type of campaigns? And do you think they'd be successful with the age group that we're talking about?
So this is very much one of my favorite things. This is more my wheelhouse, and Lily will tell you. So I'm going to back it up. I'm going to actually use an example of when I was young Republican chairman 4 years ago. Diane Waterman, who was our past president, who was president at the time, was our Republican Women's Federation president. And we got a list from our state party of the Republicans that had just moved to Maryland. And I had called up Diane and I said, do you want to split this list? Because I think we can kind of tag team this between our two auxiliaries. And I will reach out to the young Republicans and I will give you the list and you can reach out to the Republican women. And so we actually did both. So the young Republicans did a texting campaign and our Republican women did a postcard campaign. And it's something that we still kind of talk about. We still have a couple of the postcards kind of floating around, but I will give you an example of this actually working because I can actually point to someone in our federation who is my club president right now, who's when she moved to Maryland, the first piece of mail she got was from the Maryland Federation of Republican Women. And now she's a club president and she's now the chairman of our Young Republicans. So just to give you an idea of the success of that. So I am a big proponent of data. I'm a big proponent of outreach through texting. We've done postcards in Maryland. It is absolutely effective. And you can do it a couple of different ways. Obviously, we love doing the new movers. And the reason we love doing that, and I know Glynis, you're a fan of this as well, because if you can grab them when they first come to your state, they're not involved in 6 other civic associations. So if you can reach out to them first, they will be invested in your organization and not whatever else they get involved in. Because the reality is once they're settled and they get involved and then they learn about you, well, I've got to get, my son to soccer practice, or I've got to do, whatever. They already have all these other commitments and organizations that they're becoming a part of. So you're kind of going to get down on the priority list. So if you can reach them as soon as they get there, and I got to tell you, young people don't get a lot of mail anymore. So I, for one, like to keep the post office in working order. I'm really big fan of mail. I love stationery and sending mail to our members as well. So I think that's really important. It's also very personal too. On the campaign side, we've done postcards as well in more of our rural areas. But what I love is you can set up a postcard where you can do dear and then keep it blank and then have your written message and then say like sincerely, you can do like Maryland Federation or whatever federation is. But one of the things that we did, this was in 2016, was we had our Republican women's chapters sit down and at their meetings do like the postcard campaign, but they hand addressed the postcards to prospective members or whoever we were trying to reach out to, and then hand wrote the addresses. So you don't have to pay for the labels. You obviously have to, if you're going to bulk order the postcards, but you can get really creative with it and turn it into programming as well. So it can be programming and membership drive at the same time. And so that was something that I really enjoyed from a texting standpoint. Reaching out to new movers, but also high propensity voters. I think that's really important. That's something we're actually getting ready to do in Maryland that I'm really excited about. That's going to be one of my new pet projects as VP, which is reaching out to our high propensity Republican women voters who vote in every election and vote in the primaries because they're already engaged in the process. So they're already starting to pay attention. So if they're already paying attention and they care about it and they care enough to vote in the last 2 elections in both the primary and the general, these are probably the best case scenario of your potential boots on the ground, women that want to get involved, or maybe they've been sitting on their couch and they've been watching the news and it's finally time for them to get up because they care. So reaching out to them through a text or a postcard, but to take that a step further, when you do the postcard and you do the text message, make sure there's a form of follow-up, make sure there's a way for them to reach out to you on the postcard. On the text message, I would recommend having a link to a Google form or a way they can reach out on your website so they can click it and fill out a form of some sort so that someone can follow up with them. we had talked about doing it, just kind of sending them to our club page and having the individual find their club and reach out. But when you add extra steps, they're not probably going to do it. If you're just like, all right, here's our website, and then they can kind of play around a little bit, and then they just fill out a generic form, and then you send it out. That also allows you to disseminate it if you have virtual clubs, if you have, regional clubs. They may not understand if you do it by a county versus a region, depends on how your state's clubs are set up. So setting it up in a manner that is as easy for the potential member as possible is important as well. So I could talk all night about data. That is one of my favorite things, but there's definitely ways to do outreach utilizing different mechanisms. I will say we always get the question about social media outreach, and it is effective. But unfortunately, there's now so many different platforms from social media. I can't pinpoint one where I can say, if you get on X platform, this is the one to reach out to young people, because between Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, obviously, which I'm not a fan of, and I do not have TikTok. But there's so many platforms. It's hard to gauge which one you should target, and then you're splitting up, how you're doing it, and then it ultimately, your cost benefit analysis is just not there. Let's just put it that way. So, but yes, absolutely, Glennis. I'm a big fan of both of those, and my federation, I can say, has utilized both, and we've had some success. So
excellent. One of the things that we found to be very successful is on postcards is QR codes for a quick link to, believe it or not, we always said, oh, you can't do that. We don't know how to do that.
yeah.
But you know what? We've embraced technology and found out it's so simple that there's, all these great apps where you can get free QR codes. Yay!
Mm-hmm.
And they can go straight to your website. They can go straight to membership forms. They can go straight to whatever you want it to go to. It's fantastic. And again, if you're doing texting, just do a link to whatever you want them to go to, so that and someone can answer them right away. We have and I have to shout out to Kit, because Kit Whitehill is president of Texas, and she is amazing. She is not afraid to embrace something new and say, yeah, we can do that. Let's just go for it. And she has made tremendous strides in the texting area, because we hadn't really done it before. And she's pretty awesome. Okay, so we're talking about bringing in younger women, and somebody asked me, what policies rank highest with women 20 to 40? We know that we are not one policy women. We don't only believe one issue voters, but what policies seem to be on the minds of our young women, so that we know, when we are setting up our programs, what should we be looking at? What's going to be interesting and draw them in?
Yeah, so the two kind of general things that we've seen that most young women are pretty engaged with is education and the economy. So with
everyone else.
Yeah. But with education, one of the big things is, okay, I'm in college. It can be rough sometimes. I took a feminism course last semester. It was wild. I don't even know how I got the A. But that young women don't want to be in that environment of, young Republican women don't want to be in that environment of kind of censorship and feeling like you can't be heard. So that's one thing that most young women are pretty solid, or most young Republican women are pretty solid on, is that we should be able to speak freely in education, but also we want a good quality public education or private education system for our kids. That it seems to be just getting worse right now. So we really got to turn the wheels there and reverse it, because if we don't, then it's going to be even worse for our kids. But also with education, I think is a great thing, kind of not so much again as more of what policies rank, but just it's a good leadership opportunity. I will say that our liaison for Wisconsin is on her public board of education system. So giving young moms who are interested in education and want to make a difference might make the biggest difference serving on her county board of education. And being in that age where you still have kids in this system, you have a little bit more stake, which I know is something that's talked about a lot in most board of education races, is what stake do you have in the race? And I think no one has more stake in the race than someone who has kids in the system. But yeah, so then again, the other big thing, the economy, we all paying the same price at the pump. No one is more mad than the next person that inflation is hitting hard to, again, everyone, and that hits that younger demographic. I don't make a lot of money. I am young, doing part-time jobs, so that even being able to like pay for gas to get to things and or plane tickets, it gets to be a lot. And the young Republican women are pretty keen on the fact that, and I think some young liberal women too, that the inflation is definitely way too high. Taxes, certain taxes. Now, again, I love taxation and budget, so I would talk about Social Security way more than I think anyone else would. But again, I'm not like, but these are just kind of the general things that we've seen that that most young women would be engaged in. Another thing that we've kind of seen is that even student loan forgiveness, that a lot of the young Republican women don't really support the forgiveness. I mean, in my instance, I worked hard enough that I don't have to pay loans. So I'm kind of in the boat of like, okay, well, if they're getting, like, if they were going to get their loans paid, then like, where's my $10,000 check for for not even having like just the fairness in the system is wrong. And I know a lot of Republican women, young Republican women who weren't fond of that, or even people that didn't have the federal loans but had private loans and didn't even qualify for any sort of the forgiveness. That the fairness in the system, while I'm sure everyone would love to not have debt, student loan debt, just the fairness of the system kind of affected a lot more of the young Republican women because we do work. And that I've seen is something that although it would have been nice, it just wasn't fair. And young Republican women kind of realized that.
And Lily, can I just add to that,
Yes.
as someone who has student loans, I think the other part to what Lily's saying about the student loan forgiveness is when you are able to articulate the effects of it. So the way I talk about it when I'm talking with young women like that are my age, it's, you saw what happened when stimulus checks went into the economy during COVID. Okay, those checks were approximately like $1,000, right? So I make the case every time when you're articulating the point, or when you're at your local fair or your booth, wherever you're at, and you're talking about the issues, talk about the stimulus checks. And I think that's one of the things you go back to. Remember that stimulus check? Yeah, it was helpful. Well, take a look at what happened to the economy and how inflation happened. Now, Biden's student loan forgiveness was $10,000. Multiply the inflation rate by 10. Do you think you'd be able to afford to live in this economy? And the answer every time is no. And as someone who's approaching their 30s, and you're talking about buying a house, and I'm finishing paying off my car, it is a lot harder with this generation to be able to do those things, to buy a house, to pay off these debts. And you're kind of in this eternal repayment plan to the government. And that's one of the reasons why I find myself to be the Republican that I am, is because I want that individual liberty. I want to not have to rely on the government. And I very much care about that. So when you're able to phrase these issues that Lily is talking about into real life scenarios, those are also other ways where you can connect as well. And I don't want to take too much more from Lily on this, but that's just something from another angle when you're talking about policy that can help you really resonate with young women as well.
Yeah, and then just also listen to what policies young women want to talk about. We are not all singular. We are not just the same dimension. That everyone has different policies that they're interested in. So whether that is like pro-life or pro Second Amendment, state of Maryland says I can't own a gun yet, so I'm not quite as knowledgeable on that kind of policy. But everyone is interested in something, and just listening to what they're interested in and talking to them about it and helping them find ways to try to get involved and fix the issue is also very important, because every state faces different issues and every county faces different funding issues, every different mandates and everything. So just discuss and ask what policies they like, and then you can incorporate that into programming and membership.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay. I see all the time, so many of our clubs and of course our states have scholarships that we offer. And I'm sure that you all we heard it all the time when my kids were in school. Oh, there's all these scholarships out there, but nobody knows about them. I'm like, how can that be? Because I know how to Google search. Yeah, no, there's so many out there. How do we get more young women to apply for our scholarships, both at the state and at the club level? Because I hear it all the time. Oh man, if I'd heard about it, if I knew about it, I would have applied for it. And yet we have all this money and we're trying to give it to women and they don't know about it. So how do we get over that hump and get the word out about our scholarships and help these young women so they're not going into debt?
Yeah, so this is a great question, and this question I get repeatedly when I'm at state federations. And I think back to when I was in Virginia in May, and myself and our youth outreach liaison, Jesse, we talked about this for a bit. I think the big thing, first off, is having that relationship with your elected officials. This is the one instance with a scholarship you're not advocating for a political issue. You're not doing something particularly partisan. You're offering something to the community. So reaching out to your elected officials and having them put those in their newsletters that reach their constituencies. So creating a ad or a little half-page blurb that says what the scholarship is, put your little logo on the corner, get yourself some marketing out of it, and send those off to your elected officials and say, hey, can you put this on your social media? Can you put this in your newsletter? We're offering money here. And that is also a way to not only get scholarship applicants, but also a way to do a little bit of a membership drive as well. So you're picking up the moms on the way in too. So I think that's really important to do that, but to put it out there, utilize social media, reach out to your state parties as well, ask them to put that in their newsletter or put that on social media. I think that's really important, and leverage those networks. And when we talk a lot about it, youth outreach, working with the organizations that we partner with, send them to your young Republicans, send them to your college Republicans, your teenage Republicans, and say, hey, can you let your networks know that we're doing this? And a lot of it is don't just throw it in your own newsletter, because your own members are reading that newsletter. Unless they have a grandchild or a child that can apply, it's not going to be the most effective way. So leveraging those networks, utilizing the contacts that you have, both in your organization and out of your organization. It's also a great way to kind of bring someone in too. If you've got a young woman that's kind of on the, teetering, kind of like interested. I have a 17-year-old sister that only comes to things if Lily's going to be there.
She is my favorite Sofia.
That is another topic of conversation. And it was a high school senior this year. So it's one of those opportunities where you can also bring young women in as well if you let them know. But and I think the other thing too is make sure there's enough time when you put out the scholarship. Don't just be like, all right, we need applications in 2 weeks. That's the other thing. By the time someone hears about it, it's going to be too late. So think about when you drop the scholarship in terms of the application process. A lot of successful scholarships for nonprofits and external organizations that I have found, they typically drop that scholarship application in January and have it run till about April. So give yourself a couple months where you can add, you can also talk about it when you're going around to club meetings, when you have your board meeting, whenever you have your state party. A lot of our women's federation presidents sit on their state party exec boards, things like that, reaching out to the county GOPs. This is really, scholarships are really about your network and your elected officials and how you can do that. So there's just a couple of ideas. You can obviously try and put them out in the community. I mean, like, print newspapers aren't really a thing anymore, unfortunately. I like paper, but social media, you can put it on there, but how much engagement do you get, that kind of thing. So that's going to really be a word of mouth thing, and really leveraging those relationships.
So do you think it is helpful to send it to counselors for your local private schools, to the community college counselors, or put it up on the board? Does anybody even go to those things anymore?
You absolutely can do that. I think Well, I know, and you absolutely can do that. I think the problem we're facing, and I think a lot of ladies can agree, is the censorship of it.
Yeah.
Depending on your area, the school may not necessarily be like, oh, this is rebellion. We don't want we don't want our students even being around that, unfortunately, with what we're dealing with on an education front. But I mean, definitely, you can definitely try. But I find that the private schools I'm a product of private school. I find that they're much more understanding. Charter schools as well, not just necessarily like parochial schools, but the charter schools as well. You can certainly do that. That's also maybe leads into a conversation of when you have education panels and you're talking about that particular issue and the context that you make with that kind of programming, leaning into those as well, because they also may have a network that you can tap into as well.
Idea.
Yeah. Well, another thing too of kind of more of like your unconventional schooling. I mean, through COVID, we saw how bad I'm a public school kid, go to a public university, total opposite of Maria. But I made it through. But another thing is that we've seen a big push of Republicans putting their kids in homeschooling programs. So reaching out to local groups, if it's like a co-op, of making sure that those students get the opportunity to apply, because they still go to college and need some sort of scholarship. So going to that avenue would also be reaching out to another demographic, not just those that go to an actual institution for school.
That is terrific. Well, thank you, ladies. That was so great. I appreciate it. And unfortunately, I'm looking at my little clock here and it says that it's 7:58. So we are out of time. You all have been amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. In the chat, you should be able to see the URL for all of the documents that they have. And I mean, they've got PowerPoints, they've got one-pagers, they've got FAQs, they've got anything and everything you could want for engaging young women on their page at NFRW. So please, please, please go and visit it. I promise you, you will be blown away with how much there is available to you as a member. And they worked really hard on these resources and they're very, very good. I always say our website at the national level is highly underutilized. There's so much work has gone into it and so many women have done so much in their particular fields to put the resources out there, and our members don't really take advantage of everything that's available for their very, very small membership fee. So please go to the NFRW website and look at youth engagement and our outreach, and you will find so much information, and I promise it will help you bring those young women into your club and cement your leadership legacy. So if you enjoyed today, which I hope you did, I did, if you enjoyed today, then join me for next month's Empower Hour on Tuesday, August 8th, when we will be talking about legalizing marijuana. Let's talk pot. I know, spicy, right? Okay, so join me next month. And until then, have a great month. See y'all later.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, Glennis. Thanks, programs.